Hi, this is Eternal King. So I want to talk about off-meta stats for cards. It's very easy to look at the statistics on something like Mastering Runeterra and be like, okay, everything's fine. Akshan Samaira, has a healthy win rate. Timelines has a healthy win rate. Infinite Invoke has a healthy win rate. Fiora has a healthy win rate, and like the game's fine. The only problem is all those decks essentially function in a very similar play pattern, which is to say that they are non-committal decks. They aren't, these sort of build-around conditions. They aren't Teemo traps, where you're kind of all in on a certain thing. They're not like Diana Nightfall. They're not Zillion Time Bombs. They're not Nora Portals, right? All of these decks essentially function in a, again, I don't want to use the term degenerate, but it's a deck that, say, invokes an infinite number of times. It is a deck that builds up a very large akshan that strikes for very cheap and then rallies with Samaira. And it can do that by like turn 5, right? So, these are decks that, it's a very large timelines deck and you're just playing these huge creatures. It isn't the Ahiris, right? It isn't the Dianas. It isn't the Teemos. It isn't the Nikos. It isn't, it isn't the Kennons. It isn't the Azirs. It isn't the Caitlins. It isn't the Dravens. It isn't the Ezreals or the Aurelias or the Callistas or the Katarinas. Like, it's none of the build-around champs. It is just decks that, again, either invoke an infinite number of times, present this, massive card advantage akshan, or, for example, akshan by himself isn't a problem. Akshan Lee Sin, for example, where you're trying to like do the good akshan deck. You're trying to do like the, oh, I have a Lee Sin and he has text here and I'm going to try to build around him and play a bunch of spells. That deck is winning currently 43%. Just instead of rather than going, I'm going to build up a huge akshan and then rally with Samaira, just by saying I'm going to do like the thing that makes sense, and by including Lee Sin, you immediately drop your win rate from like 57% to 43% by playing the game sort of the way that it has traditionally been played, which is all, kind of a fair and balanced way. Just by doing that, you drop your win rate by, I don't know, like 13%. That's insane. So I want to talk about off-meta stats. So Akshan Lee Sin, 43% currently. It is a terrible deck, and in every single way, it is worse than simply playing Akshan Samaira, where you have a huge Akshan, and then you rally with Samaira. That is infinitely better than playing Lee Sin, which is the OTK card. It is the card that is supposed to OTK, but is infinitely worse than, the 2-mana rally cycle champ. So that's not great. So again, keep these numbers in mind. 43% for Lee Sin versus 57% for Akshan Samaira. 45% currently for Vladimir, and I think that's a little overrepresented. I think that's going to go much lower. I've seen this number much lower. I've seen it sub 40% at certain times. So again, this deck is not very good. So Vladimir 45%. We'll keep looking and keep talking about sort of some of these off-meta decks. Aphelios down to 50% because, again, there are more efficient ways to infinitely cycle out that isn't including Aphelios or Victor. It's, again, more efficient to run Zoe almost 100% of the time. Diana Zoe down to 48%. So even these invoke lists aren't doing great, these infinite invoke lists, which is hilarious because they're, fairly unfair in their construction, and they should be doing well, and they're not doing well. Ryze down to 42%. Holy smokes. 42% for Ryze. That's hilarious. Lurk down to 48%, but Lurk is like literally all of standard, so don't worry about that too much. Poppy, 45%. Mono Shurima, 39%. So this is kind of, where the alarm bells start raising. When we start seeing decks that have traditionally been at like 48% drop down to 39%, that's when the alarm bells really need to start being raised. Because Mono Shurima is a great deck. There's nothing wrong with it. It's very powerful. But it isn't, degenerate enough. It isn't, I'm going to play a big akshan and then rally off a Samaira by turn 5. It's not that. it's trying to play the long game. It's trying to do something that is interesting and dynamic, and that's a mistake because that's not how Eternal plays right now. So 39% for Mono Shurima, 47% for Aurelia, because again, why play Blades? The Annie-Ezreal deck, the one that Margin was saying was so good, is at 50%, so it is not, in fact, so good. Nora is down to sub 30%. Nora is down to 29%. Because, again, she is just food for Samaira, right? Samaira is going to come down and eat Nora. Akshan is going to grappling hook Nora. And that's going to be, like, so good for you that why ever play Nora? So Nora's down to sub 30%, guys. Hecarim, sub 50%, of course. He used to be good enough. He is no longer good enough. Shyvana is 40%. So, again, Shyvana just got buffed. Her entire Dragon kit just got buffed. She is currently at 40% in Eternal. Anivia, 34%, guys. 34% for Anivia. So again, alarm bells. Big alarm bells, guys. When we see Anivia drop down, like normally she's sub 50%, she's like 49%. She is currently at 34%. Why would you ever want to duplicate Anivia, play a control list, do all this cool stuff? Why would you ever want to do that for 6 mana when you can just rally a big Akshan? And again, these cards only cost 2 mana. So why would you ever want to do that? Continuing on, Galio Undir just got new cards released, sitting at 50%. That's pretty sad considering how strong the new tribal card was for Formidable. It's not great. 50% for Formidable. It's not very good. Let's see what else we got here. Plunder Gangplank. So Gangplank Sejuani, traditionally one of the strongest mid-range decks in the game, is currently sitting at 46%. That's a really bad performance for Gangplank Sejuani. Really, really bad. So keep an eye on that. Vayne Rumble. So again, Rumble, another cool card that is kind of all in on a certain mechanic. Very high commitment. Sitting at 50-50. Not great. Heimer Jayce, one of the strongest decks in Standard, currently at 46%. So, normal control decks that are trying to do control-y things, really, really bad in Eternal, currently. Really bad. 46%. Katarina Yassao. Yassao, again, probably one of the most fun cards in Eternal. Never been a really good deck. Usually a little bit close to sub 50%. Sometimes he performs a little better than 50%, depending on, the person piloting. Currently at 44%, so that's really, really bad for Yassao. Again, keep an eye on that. Why would you ever want to, stun things when you can just Akshan Samaira? Deep, 32%, guys. Okay? Deep, one of the longest, lasting archetypes in the game. Been around a long time, 32%. So again, we can do this all day. We can talk all day, Asol, Scion, Tryndamere, we can do this Malphite. I can go all day and talk about how all of these cards are, 45%, 46%, 39%, but just all of these cards are underperforming in the current state of Eternal. And so that's really bad, and a lot of it has to do with, again, the Akshan buff. A lot of it has to do with the way that Samaira functions as a card. And then a lot of it has to do with sort of the infinite invoke shenanigans, because it really locks things out where it's like either you're invoking an infinite number of comets, and again, that's not good enough right now because, Akshan Samaira exists and it wins by turn 5. But even if Akshan Samaira gets nerfed, then you would also have to nerf some of the, the infinite invoke, infinite cycling stuff as well, just to open things back up for mid-range and allow, actual cards to be played again. It's very important that, things like Evelynn, things like Gwen, things like Jayce, Nocturne, it's very important that these cards, we talk about deep sub 40%, so like Melkai. It's very important that these cards be playable, and they can't be playable in a world, with infinite comets, in a world with infinite tempo and infinite cycling and just kind of all this degenerate stuff. And that's bad because you want these decks to be playable. This is Eternal King signing out.